I am here with some amazing people from the TTRPG space. That's tabletop gaming. You guys should know that. Tabletop role-playing gaming. I should know that. Anyways, you probably noticed my really cool shirt. What's this about the Justice League? What does that have to do with D&D? Really nothing, but it has a lot to do with world creation, having colorful, interesting characters. And that's what NPCs are at the end of the day. They're colorful, interesting characters that populate your world, and that's what we're talking about today. My name is Jamie Van Dorn. I'm the founder and CEO of Neverending. Really quick who we are. You probably know this if you're already following the channel. But for those of you who don't know, we are working to build an amazing online space where you're going to be able to create webcomics and animated videos as easily as playing a video game. And I realized that I've just been talking while staring at my microphone. That's probably super useful. Anyway, you can already create really interesting 2D characters using for character portraits or NPCs or tokens with a variety of body types and a variety of outfits. We've got really cool textured hair options. We've got really cool like shaved hair options, all sorts of options for you to create really interesting characters. This is just where we're starting, but we will be rolling out tools that we are working on, like I said, where you'll be able to turn your D&D games into actual animated videos, shorts and longs. But for now, I want to start giving the space over to our wonderful guests. But before we do that, we're doing something extra special today. So many of you probably aren't aware that kidney disease, that 1 in 3 people in the US are at risk of kidney disease. It's especially prevalent for people with diabetes or high blood pressure. It's one of the leading causes of death. There are lots of great charities out there that are working to not just bring awareness, but work towards a cure and work towards providing resources for folks who are struggling and living with kidney disease. One of those is the Kidney Foundation of Central PA. We're really excited to be making a donation to them today, and we're going to be asking you guys to consider donating as well. And if you do, if you make a $5 donation or more, Neverending will also make an additional $5 donation up to $500. We're small, so that's why it's a small amount, but we're super excited to do this. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to each of our guests to talk about themselves for a second, introduce themselves, and then we'll get going. So, take it away. Gabe.
Okay. Hi, I'm Gabe. I don't know. I'm a boring person, but I like talking about. Notice I didn't look at the screen. I like talking about role-playing games, and I like just making up characters. One of my favorite things is, I don't know. I like breaking the rules because then people have a whole lot better of a time. I found out, especially when it comes to NPCs, because when it comes to people like Lauren who know too much about Dungeons and Dragons, if I change the way mechanics work for an NPC or a character that Lauren might know of, there is always a look of joy in her eyes that is irreplaceable.
That's fantastic. But Gabe, you also do a lot in the TTRPG space. So you do some DMing, you do some producing. Yeah. So for everybody out there, Gabe is kind of a big deal, like legitimately. So, Izza, do you want to introduce yourself?
What, after Gabe? Yeah, hi. My name's Izza. I go by Evil Clever Dog on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. I'm a designer and cosplayer and fabricator, but I'm also a TTRPG streamer and podcaster and edging into that TTRPG creation space as well. I do a lot of work with the Asians Represent podcast. I've hosted episodes on mixed race representation in TTRPGs and fantasy media, and contributed to episodes on like costume and clothing and fashion design in TTRPGs, fantasy media, etc. And my favorite thing about playing TTRPGs is creating cool characters and then making massive Pinterest boards and drawing them. So character creation, yeah, I love that shit. Let's talk about it.
Fantastic. Last but definitely not least, I'm so happy to have you on stream with us, Lauren.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hi. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Lauren Urban. I'm the content coordinator for Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms. I am here because Gabe delights me every single time. And so I am just here to see what rules he's going to break to make me happy. I also like making characters and trying to make characters that are fun and interesting, and then having them interact with people. That's my jam for any TTRPG. Is when I can interact as a character with another awesome player who is a character. That's where I find my meat and potatoes.
That's fantastic. Well, I am excited to have you guys on stream with us. Thank you so much for giving us your time. So we're talking about NPCs. So let's start with kind of the elephant in the room. When I first started playing D&D, I just NPCs would come up and I would just use my regular voice. But but as I watched more streams and things much later in life, I felt like a little bit of pressure to do voices, and as some people do. Sometimes it's super fun. Sometimes it's not super fun, but I don't think it's really necessary to make an NPC engaging. I think there can be a lot of other ways that you can make an NPC interesting, and I don't think that it's my voice that's going to make any of my players fall in love with an NPC that I introduce them to. So I would love to kick it over to you guys and hear about what you guys think is really the critical stuff. What's the secret sauce in having an NPC that's engaging, or that your players fall in love with, or you as a player fall in love with?
I mean, I'll just start with that silly voice thing. I 100% agree. I think a funny, silly, unique voice can be a reaction from a player. Like, yeah, we've all kind of done it just on the fly, and that will get your players giggling or interested or whatever. But if that NPC doesn't then follow up as a person that they are interested in hanging out with, silly voice is not going to go very far. So silly voices are fun to throw in there if you want to, if you can, but otherwise it's just kind of a flash in the pan if that character doesn't have something behind them. But yeah, I feel bad for people who are intimidated about getting into D&D because of silly voices, because I know plenty of amazing DMs who never do voices for any of their NPCs.
I think people can get very bogged down in the whole like accents and voices thing, and actually it kind of prevents them from making that character more fully fleshed out, because they're so fixated on trying to get that like voice or accent right, or trying to like entertain the players with it, that character ends up, as Lauren said, kind of falling flat a little bit. Whereas silly voice or not, the NPCs that I always find myself most wanting to engage with as a player are the ones where I feel like they have some kind of interesting potential rapport with my character or the party as a whole. A little piece of conflict or something, or they represent something that my character is looking for, or wants to engage with more within that world, and they're sort of like a gateway to that, is like the spark of what will make me interested in an NPC. And then seeing the DM be able to follow through with that, with giving them more interesting in-depth characterization as you get to know them more, makes them a really like fulfilling NPC to get to know as a player.
I've found that I realize I've used this term all the time. If you give people a chance to opt in, it lets them decide if they want to interact with an NPC or not. If the NPC doesn't approach them, if it's a blacksmith who is sitting there working, minding their business, working on a blade, and they have this important information to the party, but the party doesn't want to talk to them, you know what? The party doesn't talk to them. Maybe they don't get that piece of information. Maybe they have incentive to come back to it, but give them the chance to decide they want to be the reason to talk to this person. If everyone approaches them, it almost, to me, it makes it more work for me, because then I'm like, well, crap, now I do have to remember everything about this person. But if they go past that weird ancient giant worm thing, I'm not upset about it, because then that's stuff that I don't have to consider. But it gives the party agency to decide if they want this character to be important or not. I don't always have to decide that.
That's a
Yeah.
really good point. That's like a video game. It's like the difference between a video game and a role playing game.
Yep.
And more Knight, you were about to say something.
Well, and it's super important because I feel like there's two major types of NPCs. There's the ones that I got to create because they're important to the story that's happening and important to what is needing to happen in the game. And then there's the ones that the players summon because they need something.
Yeah.
And I think when we talk about the silly voiced ones, the ones that are the flash that happens, a lot of the time it's the ones that they summon. It's the random person that they go up to that they suddenly want to engage with for whatever reason. Maybe it's, oh, we just think if we talk to this town guard, they're going to have the information that we need, and you got to create something on the fly. So it can be easy in those moments to go for something a little more funny. But like Gabe said, that's a moment where the player has made an agency choice in the game and literally created a person out of nothing. They've asked for a being to exist who can help them. And so I think it's really important that that person that then you create out of whole cloth for them has at least one thing that they can latch onto, one defining trait. And then if it's a 10-second conversation and they get what they need and walk away, great. And if it turns into a lifelong friendship, great. But yeah, it's always exciting when your players are like, we're going to go over here, especially that moment of we have a really good reason to go talk to a person that we think is important, but I didn't think about that person.
Yeah.
Now I got to make them up.
Something. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I love that idea of that image of the players summoning them out of thin air, like that's really powerful, and that gets the heart of like this idea of co-creating the story. But Gabe's, I want to give you the space to put in your comment.
Something I've been thinking about doing this for like a week. Something that I think I'm going to start doing is giving each member of my party, whenever I run a game, like campaigns at least, a anonymous sheet that each of them have a link to, and then like give them a spot to fill in an NPC that's important to them. Because the other thing is people latch on to characters for plenty of reasons, and sometimes it might be that like a character reminds them of someone close to them, or a character reminds them of someone that they're like not sure how they feel about. And especially with stream games where comfort is incredibly important. Like if it's a pre-recorded game or a podcast game, if something happens to be like, that was uncomfortable, let's scrap that. But for a streamed game, there are sometimes NPCs that I'll make and someone is so emotionally attached to them that if something happened to them, they would be genuinely upset. And I don't like the idea of like, well, it's just a game. Like I cry to movies where a pet like passes away. I know it's a movie. My dog is fine, but I'm still upset to hell. So
Thank you, doesthedogdie.com.
I will not watch I have watched the first half of I Am Legend 6 times. So but like giving the party like a chance to be like, this is an NPC that's important to me as a player, because then also if I put them in danger, that person has a sense of comfort and knowledge that this person isn't just going to be taken away or killed. Like, and with that knowledge, it'll make it so much easier to buy in. If they're like, oh gosh, that person just got swallowed by a dragon, but I know that person is on my list that like is really important to me personally, and I don't want to see die, then their character can engage with it, comfortably dive into it. They have a sense of reassurance. And it also means that when that character is taken off of their list, then if something tragic or dire happens, they're okay with it. They can accept it. They don't have to see it coming, but it's not that it's going to affect them the same way.
I love that you've baked in safety tools to your NPCs. That is amazing.
Yeah, that's such an amazing idea that I really love as someone who
Take it.
does like get very attached to NPCs, but also I create NPCs around my player character's backstory. and I've had times where DMs have treated those NPCs very callously.
Yeah.
And I've had other times where DMs have treated those NPCs with a lot of respect and have approached me and been like, okay, how do you want me to portray this character? What is their relationship with your PC going to be like? And treated it as if like I had control over a sense of control over some aspects of how that character is going to be used in the game, which I think is very valuable for keeping players invested and not feeling like they're targeted for creating NPCs important to their player characters.
I played in a campaign where everyone had to make 2 NPCs, and then like some of them just died. One of them betrayed all of us. And it was like really upsetting because it was like we had to make these characters that we had to define the relationships with. And then it was like, oh yeah, so that character that you created to be their childhood best friend is the one who killed the other 2 and then threw you down a hole. And I'm like, but we played hopscotch. I wrote that part. I didn't I didn't write it. Murder us. So it's always like if and I like giving my crew a chance to make their own NPCs, because it's like I don't know what is going to be the best kind of character for you, especially when it comes to backstory. I hate controlling someone's backstory. 9 times out of 10, I'm like, hey, this is your scene. You tell me what you want to happen. And I'll literally be like, do you want this person to die in this moment? Like I want them to give me permission to kill something from their backstory, because I have so much the rest of this story to work with. I don't need to take that away from them.
Yeah. And some players want characters from their backstory to potentially be in danger or die. Some players don't. Some players will be fine with it happening to a certain character, but not a different character. And I think baking in a use of safety tools around that is just as valuable as baking it into like a session 0.
Yeah. It seems in a way that it's like a way to actually allow different play styles at the table, because you know, you can have these different types of interactions with different NPCs, and some of them are NPCs at risk because that's what that person wants, and some of them are just feel good, you know, fluffy, safe, comfy, you know, interactions because that's what that person is looking for. So that's really interesting to me. Lauren,
you also get into that moment in where I have created an NPC that the entire party has interacted with, and some have now closer connections than others. And so being a little careful about, well, this character has been the person who has become attached to this NPC, and the rest of the party is like, okay, yeah, sure, they're cool. When you put that character in danger, you got to be a little cautious about, well, I don't want the party getting split if this is a fight and I put an NPC in danger that only one player wants to go after. You know, maybe that's the moment that I message that one player and I'm like, hey, listen, if you're okay with this, I'm good. Otherwise, you know, someone else will get to them. Some other NPC will take care of this. Go be with your squad. But I was thinking about something else that I've stolen off of the internet from many, many years ago, which is the idea of, I know a person. It came up on Twitter a while ago and it kind of blew up, and I've put it into my games and I love it. And it's the idea that in important pivotal moments when your players are forming a plan and have that, it's the classic, I know a guy, I know a person, like taking that and giving the players a little of that agency in the moment to help create an NPC. And we've done this a couple times in my podcast and it's always been fun and fascinating. And we're like, okay, you know a person. How do you know this person? Where do you know this person from? In like 3 or 4 minutes, you can craft an NPC with the player for their character that is exactly what they need for the story, and then they're going to have ties to. And then I usually throw in a little bit of a twist in where I say, okay, how is your relationship with this character? What do you think it is? Like, what does the character think it is? And then I make them roll some kind of check that they have a good shot at being good at. You know, it's not always a charisma check, but like, all right, if this is a study buddy that the wizard used to have, I'll have them roll like an intelligence check or something. Depending on their check, they'll keep it private, and that's how the NPC remembers them. So that at least that interaction has a little bit of a surprise in there, but I'm not going to completely turn, well, I have this friend into an enemy. But it's great then when they show up, because then the rest of the party is invested in this character because they're important to their plot. And then one character is super invested because this is my childhood friend. This is my study buddy. So that's been, I got that off the internet. Someone had slightly more mechanical, like roll a charisma check kind of things. But the idea of just like in the moment going, all right, let's create this person. Let's do this.
I love it. I love that also it's a good check, but it's based on like how that interaction might happen. Like I love the fact that like it was a study buddy, you make an intelligence check. That's so cool. And it's not overly crunchy, it's just crunchy enough. So I am stealing that. I'm stealing all of your guys' ideas, by the way. Like I don't think I've ever built NPCs into my backstory and like my character's backstory, and that, so yoinking on that. Yoinking on Gabe's, like everybody gets kind of this list of here are some of the NPCs and how do you feel, like are you okay with losing them or not? Yoink on that. Like I'm gonna have so many new tools in my toolbox. This is really fantastic. What do you guys think it is about certain NPCs that do suddenly trigger an attachment beyond like a utility or beyond? It's with the unexpected NPCs. When you have a party or when you're a player and you just kind of meet an NPC, what about it? What have been either some examples, or what do you think have been some of the things that have caused people to be like, oh my gosh, we love this person, we want to keep them with us forever?
I'm not going first on this one.
You know what? I'm gonna bring up a specific one that I had as a player, because I think there is this is a funny NPC. This is a quirky NPC. The ones that I get super attached to, and I think a lot of people do in the long run, are the ones when you're having your interaction with them, you make some kind of emotional connection. And it doesn't have to be like a huge, I've now fallen in love with you. I was playing in a campaign with Jasmine Bueller, who Gabe might know very well. Wonderful, amazing DM. And she had an NPC that was we had gone to for some information, and we're talking about with a bunch of things. And afterwards, our party was going off to go do this event where we're going to help carry turtles somewhere to safety. And she was going to go do the same thing. And my character just out of curiosity was just like, oh, you're coming to the thing. Do you want to come with us? And she said as the NPC, oh, I used to go with my husband, but he passed away. And so, yeah, I haven't gone in a while, but I would like to be able to go with some people. So sure, if you'd like to have me along. And in that moment, a whole bunch of us were like, oh, yes, we would love to have you. And then like she became my turtle buddy. I was like, I am going to make sure that she has the best time, just because I had this moment after she had been a fairly important story point NPC, and now she became an emotional NPC. And I wanted to go back to go see her all the time. She's still, I'm looking over Vonda in my character sheet. She's still listed as like Vonda from the Turtle Tribe. Is one of my favorite characters. She was in one game once, but I love that character. I want to go back.
Is she a turtle?
No, she was a human. She was just, and it was in this carnival, and there was she was doing like readings on people, but it was more fun. And yeah, we had these story beats, and then we had this emotional moment where she said this fairly natural thing that made us all go, huh. And so that's the moment when your PCs connect with your NPC on some kind of emotional level. That's when they want to come back.
Yeah, that is basically what I was going to say as well, also with a specific example, but that is it. It's an emotional connection between the characters that then builds to something more. So like the specific example I wanted to give was a character I've actually talked about on my Twitter before, an NPC called Meredith in one of the games I play, who is now in the game my character's boyfriend. And when they first met, he basically my character met him in the bar at a major's college, which she had stolen an artifact from, and then they'd brought her back to the college because they realized that she should have had it the entire time because it belonged to her family, all this stuff. But she felt basically like she did not belong there. She was someone who learned magic not at a college, and felt like it wasn't like a world for her. And so she was just sort of exploring the campus and stumbled into this bar and met a bunch of like the college kid NPCs. And the reason she connected with this one character, Midith, was because he was the only one who, when she didn't understand things about how the college worked, didn't sort of even jokingly mock her for it. And over the time they spent together, like the reason they connected further was because he was also someone who sort of felt like an outcast in general from his family in the college. And then she ended up taking him with her on like certain missions where his skills were useful because he was a necromancer and into conjuration and stuff like that. So he had schools of magic that weren't the schools of magic she was an expert in. And then over time, like, I would just realize like, oh yeah, she's going to flirt with him. Like, absolutely. And these two wizards just connected over like magic and both feeling like outsiders and outcasts in a world that they didn't feel like they had full access to. And this like really sweet romance like blossomed between the two of them, and like hands down my favorite like romance I've ever played out in a TTRPG, because I wasn't expecting it necessarily from that character. And like he still like adventures around with her like all the time, and you know, she helped him like separate himself from his very awful family who he hated and felt like he was ostracized from, and he's done like similar things for her where he's helped her overcome like oppression and marginalization and stuff like that. Big running theme in a lot of the characters I make. So yeah, like just this like one moment of connection of like, oh, this is the person who seems to understand that just because I don't know fully what's going on here doesn't mean I'm stupid. Yeah. That blossomed into like a really deep understanding of one another between a player character and an NPC.
My story is also from Jasmine Biolar, and it was a character that rode a turtle. So there's a weird theme.
She is a fan of turtles. I'm here for it, but she is a fan.
And it was a character who was a barbarian gnome named Sunny Florendale, who was kind of a jerk the first time like we met her. And I was like, you suck. I was like, you are not a nice person. And it was more that the interactions were great because the conversation was blunt and upfront, and it was one of those moments of sometimes the things that make me, Gabe, enjoy an NPC the most are seeing traits that I would like more people I interact with in every day to just be like. Sometimes people who are blunt can be incredibly rude, but if it's not about things that are terrible, if it's someone's like, well, no, your taste is just kind of bad, I'm like, okay, well, hold on, let's talk. Like it's not something that is really harmful, and sometimes it's annoying to be blunt, but sometimes it's like kind of refreshing and sweet. And then like the second interaction, I accidentally missed a not a date or something with the NPC, but that's because we were rescuing a lost child, and then I got hit with a bottle, and I'm like, you really suck. But then like we played chess the third time because that was an equal middle ground of wit and skill, and then I'm like, whoa, this is a really interesting character that I am starting to enjoy, and now we're dating and I'm part of a crime family. So like it was a very weird progression that was not expected, but the seeing traits of like, because I sometimes like Gabe wishes people more blunt and just upfront and honest, and I'm not always gonna like it, but God, I always appreciate it, because then I don't have to do a guessing game. When I don't have to guess an NPC's intentions, even if I don't like them, I'm like, you know what? If I see you again, though, I'm not going to try to fight you. I know that you have terrible taste in weaponry, but You're all right.
And this continues to antagonistic NPCs as well. And and ones that are not even meant to be redeemed, and that can have still that same emotional catharsis. One of my main antagonistic NPCs was an ally who was an awful person. She was that person to the party who was, you're out of line, but you're not wrong, and was in a position of authority over one of the characters. And so she was always that, oh, we gotta go talk to Balana Zadok again. All right, fine. And she had good information, and she knew what she was talking about, and she was always either right or had a good point, but she was just the worst person and really stuck up and very haughty about the whole thing. And so that I just want to prove myself to her or show her wrong or whatever became a running theme, so that when she took her turn and became the person who, haha, it was my evil plan all along, my characters felt vindicated. Like, aha, you're an awful person, and now we have a reason to smack you over the head. And so it was like that joyful moment of, you're horrible, but now I get to do something about it. So having that push and pull with a character that then can have that kind of catharsis is always fun. But it doesn't always have to be a positive emotion. It can be a negative emotion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when a character feels like they have something to prove to another character, that can be a very powerful motivation for that NPC to keep coming back, not necessarily as like a positive influence in their like lives. They don't even have to be a full-on villain, but just like having a character that just kind of gets under your character's skin and makes them go like, oh, this guy thinks I don't have the arcane knowledge to have expertise in this area just because I'm young, or this person is doubting me because of my upbringing or something like that. Like spite is a very powerful motivator, even for D&D characters.
Absolutely. Wow. This is such a rich discussion. I'm loving these examples and everything that we're getting. Have you guys when have been like, so I do like to normally focus on like the positive stuff and when things go right, but sometimes it's useful to like look at like, gosh, I wish I had done this better, or, you know, here's a lesson that I learned about NPCs. So if we go kind of down that path a little bit, have there been any times that you've introduced an NPC, you thought they would really take off with the players, or, you know, is in your case where you can tell that the DM expected you guys to really engage with somebody and you're like, nah, it's okay, I'll take a pass. You know, it just didn't work out well, you know, so, you know, what are like just some of maybe the missteps that you've seen, you know, or things that you've learned from and evolved? Anything along those lines?
This has happened recently. There's to no surprise, I joke about it on Twitter a lot, but Gabe is not an antagonistic DM or a player. I actually really hate party conflict. It makes me so uncomfortable. And there's often NPCs that I'm like, I want them to be weird and mysterious. And I get so excited and focused on that I don't make them approachable. So they're like, yes, come look in this book of secrets that I hold. And then they're like, nah, bye. And I'm like, wait, no, but they've got like gifts for you. Come back.
Come back.
and something that I've literally like done a handful of times is like, if it's a stream show or if it's a podcast or something, I'll literally say, hey, Gabe is just telling you above the board, like directly, this person is not trying to trick you. Like, I will just say it right at the top because I'm aware that like sometimes I introduced a character on a stream show that was a wizard that had a moving statue with a coffin on their back full of bones. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to tell them ahead of time, this is not a trap. He is actively trying to help you. He's weird, but I need you to know that. Your characters can be suspicious, but I need you as people to know he's not going to try to put you in his bone coffin on his statue's back. And then with that information, they dive right into it. They're like, okay, we know he's not going to. I'll be like, I'm not saying anyone else is trustworthy, but this person is good. Like, you can act. And then I realized how much trust it garners, and then it lets them be like, oh, Gabe isn't trying to play us. Because like the times that if I don't introduce an NPC as friendly or approachable or sincere, like I don't ever feel like it's on the party's. It's not on the party side for not trusting them. It's not on the party side for not diving into this conversation. It's a weird man with a statue that lives in a skeleton on like bones on its back. And I'm like, you know what, Gabe? Just because you know that there is canonical mechanics that you're pulling this from, they see a weird bone man. So you just give them that extra agency and understanding.
I'm glad that Gabe went first because it gave me a chance to go through the litany of mistakes that I have made in the past and try to pick one they can actually verbalize consistently. Early on in the podcast that I run, the players ended up in a town that was going to have not only some story beats in it, but specifically family members of one of my players. And so there was important story beats, like they were on a mission that was going to take them through this town. So there's important things in it. There was some side questy stuff they could engage with. And then there was family. And I spent, because I thought, because there was all of that going on, I made way too many NPCs in advance. I put too much effort into all of them. Instead of just focusing on a couple of the ones that needed to be there, you know, the mom and the dad for the player, the main antagonist, the one person who is going to offer some information, and that's it. I had just reams and reams of people that I had created, and even if some of them, they weren't like full stat blocks, but there was still a lot of time and effort put into, all right, this thing is going to happen and all this, and it's an over preparation thing that I think every DM goes through, but I did it specifically with this town. And so what happened was when my players finally got to the point where they're like, I'm sick of this town, we need to leave. There was this moment in my heart of, but there's still like 20 people you haven't met yet. And that was a moment. That was a moment where I'm like, but they don't care about those 20 people. And that's okay. You need to be okay with them. They got the information they need and they want to leave Amphale. They got to get out of Amphale.
But Robert, he has a family. He makes souffles.
It was bad. Like there was way too much. And so that over creation, not just of numbers and the impetus to populate an entire town, but also just of too much information even for important NPCs. You know, like really the only person I needed to stat block out was the one person I knew they were going to end up fighting. That was it. Everybody else, there's probably not going to be fighting. Doesn't matter what their AC is. Doesn't matter any of this. They don't need to know all the people that are in the tavern that are going to be the regulars there. Like I just put way too much effort into all of it, and then it broke my heart when they left. So yeah, taking that moment and not only shaving down my preparation and trusting that I could come up with more NPC information on the fly, or that my NPC creation could be a little more succinct and then create more stuff as we go. And then also just grappling with the fact that it was okay that my players just went bye. And it was, yeah. There was multiple learning experiences over the course of Amphale.
Hey, you can always just reuse those NPCs another time. Don't worry about it.
You know what? And usually I would 100% agree with that, but that moment became that weird learning moment where I'm like, well, now I can't use any of these NPCs because I'm going to use them and the players are going to think of them as like this person that they met in Waterdeep, and I'm always going to remember them as the barkeep who was supposed to be in the tavern they were going to go into to go do this. Yeah. Oh, too much. I did way too much. Too much.
I think I can relate this back to something we mentioned earlier, which was about like players creating NPCs for their backstories and how DMs handle that. So as I mentioned, I'm a player who really enjoys giving my DMs like some NPCs related to my character's backstory that they get to play around with, to varying degrees of feeling satisfied with how that was handled. And I can remember one experience where the party ended up going back to my character's hometown, and there were two NPCs in particular that I had sort of created around my character. One was a sort of like mentor figure, and one was like a best friend / sort of girlfriend, on and off again girlfriend. And in fact, I think it kind of relates to like what happened relates to a broader experience of like, if a player has created something related to their backstory that is very clearly like something they want to engage with and have the other players in the party engage with as well, allow them to do it. Because what ended up happening was I'm not blaming the DM here, that I think there were some crossed wires with like how we talked about the game. People always joke about that thing about like, oh yeah, hurt me to the DM. And the joke may have gone a bit too far, because what the DM ended up doing was we got back to my character's hometown, and we did get to like explore it a little. And it was also quite a unique place that I had made, I think, in my opinion. And then almost immediately the rug was pulled out from under us, and it turned, and like my character's mentor figure died, and my character's sort of old friend turned on us. And I was a bit sort of unhappy about this development, because that wasn't what I would have wanted if the DM had asked me how I wanted those characters to be played and how I wanted that town to be presented. And that's not to say that I'm like, no, you have to do it my way, like I want to control the game. Like that's not what I'm saying at all. It was a space that I was looking forward to engaging with, and characters I was looking forward to interacting with, and having the other characters in the party interact with, because I felt like they would shed some interesting light on adding some depth to my character and her like life before she met the party. And it sort of felt like that just got kind of yoinked away before we got to engage with it, and also frankly like traumatized my character in a way that I wasn't quite like anticipating happening that day. And then had to kind of RP through this motion of like, okay, well, my character immediately wants to go back to that town and figure out what the fuck was going on, but this other NPC who's with us is saying very clearly like, you can't do that right now, because now there's a black dragon that's like controlling the town, was like what ended up happening, that we weren't prepared to fight. And so I had to kind of figure out very quickly how to put my character in a headspace of like, she is definitely going to go back there and confront this and try to fix things and try to save these people, but she also has to just like put that on the back burner. Which is a quite big emotional turn for a player and a character to have to make. And I think if it's going to happen, might be something that you want to talk to the player in question about, rather than spring it on them without them expecting it.
And
ideas. No, go ahead.
Yeah.
You say your thing.
I would say, as a player who's also been in that experience, we put a lot of pressure on DMs to, hey, talk to your players, talk to your players, talk to your players. Players, talk to your DMs. And keep talking to them. And especially in those kind of moments where if you're comfortable with a DM and the party who, all right, they know my lines and veils, they know my comfort level, they know how I usually like to play, and stuff has happened in the game and where your character or you are now in a different headspace than normal, talk to your DM and say, hey, listen, I know the story is kind of going in this direction, or the rest of the players kind of want to go in this direction. And I don't want to, like, I admire the fact that you were like, I need to put my character in a place in where they're going to stay with the party, because that's what we try to do. Like, keep the party cohesion. I'm going to, I don't want to just do the thing that my character does and it kind of ruins the fun for everybody. But hey, I've just gone through this big thing that my character is gravitating towards. And like, I had a character that was in that space and we're like, basically we had the final battle of the campaign, and then there was like about 2 months of denouement, and really horrible, horrific things had happened. And specifically, my character knew lots of people who had died, and I was okay with all of that. But the turn that happened afterwards, kind of immediately into a more silly tone, was something that most of the other players needed and wanted, but my character saw as really disrespectful. Of like,
Yeah.
hey, I haven't even had a chance to mourn my friends yet, and you're already talking about going to a party. And so talking with your DM and saying, hey, I am going to meet you halfway. I'm going to make sure that I do the work to not bring the party down, but can you help me, and and talk to the other players and say, this is where my character is, can you help me get a scene in here somewhere so that I can get the catharsis, and then we can have a nice emotional moment. So
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you have NPCs that cause that kind of distress, and you have a player who is now in a different headspace than the rest, like, as a player, do not be afraid to talk to the rest of the other players. Do not be
Yeah.
afraid to talk to the DM and say, hey, this is where I am, this is where my character is, how can we work this out together? Because I guarantee when you do that, the stuff that happens in game will be way more impactful because everybody will be on board.
Yeah, and that is exactly what happened. Was I ended up, it took me a couple of sessions to be like, okay, I do need to like bring this up. And then when I brought it up, immediately we were able to discuss like things my character could do, things that could happen to my character that could help like ease her like mental distress and make her feel more motivated to stay with the party, instead of just very obviously wanting to go back to her hometown and be like, I'm gonna stab this dragon. And it means that I also was able to like re-engage with the game much more effectively after that, instead of feeling like, oh, I don't know, and being unsure and not being able to like RP to my fullest.
This is some great stuff. I hope everybody in chat or watching is loving this, because I am legitimately loving this. This is like really, really great stuff. We have two different paths that we can go down right now. So we've got about 13 minutes left, or so, give or take, 6 hours. I'm kidding. It's just there's so much good content here. Like, we could go on. So I want to leave it up to you guys. There are two different things that I think are really useful for newer or even moderate DMs that kind of can happen. One is dealing with kind of newer players that want to build in all of these super NPCs. Like, my uncle is the king of this country, and so I have access. So we can talk about how you as a DM work with that, or how you as a player get comfortable with kind of scaling that back, because your NPCs still have to live in a shared world. Or we can talk about how do you keep track of all of these NPCs and these characters. So there's two very different paths we could go down, and I want to look, Gabe is like, those are two super different things.
No, that's not my favorite.
Oh, he's like, keep track.
Gabe doesn't keep track. I'm gonna be honest. I forget most of their names, and I wait to see if they remember their names. And if they don't, sometimes I'll make it up. And like the thing is, if people are like, Gabe, that wasn't their name, I'm like, that's crazy. But for the first part, I don't know. We talked about trust a bunch. If they can trust you, sometimes like the DM can just trust a member of the party to take control of an NPC. NPC does not mean it has to be controlled by the DM. Like, that is nothing that's listed in the rules. If you give, for example, for Izza's character, if there was an NPC that was important to her backstory, and Izza had control over that NPC as well for that scene, that almost assuredly would have gone entirely different, because you would have been in control of how much conflict there was, how far the conflict went, if the conflict ended peacefully or like negatively, and then the DM can play off of whatever you wanted after you end that control. The party knows this is what Izza wanted to happen because you were in control of it. I love relinquishing control, because like it lets someone feel like almost like a tertiary DM. Like give them especially if it's someone's backstory, give them control of their backstory. If I'm DMing, I can control NPC guard 13. Well, your character goes to go talk to the king and everyone else is trying to figure out what's happening. Like that's great, because then also the person whose backstory you're exploring gets to control how much is or isn't revealed. And it's not in a way of like, no, don't tell them yet. I don't want them to know that. They get to decide how much everybody knows. And then the DM's not taking that agency away of like sharing a secret that people weren't supposed to know. Plus, then it takes away responsibility. I hate being responsible for too long.
God, that's really good. I should do that more in my games.
I'm
stealing that.
Smart role players do
Yonk.
Yeah, like I have a DM I play with who does that in a way as well. And in particular, I think it's come up a lot in relation to like cultural aspects, which I think is really interesting. Is this DM being like, look, I'm white, you're not. You created a character who you want to be coded a particular way. So when we arrive in the city that your character is from, you describe it, describe the architecture, describe what people are wearing, describe the temperature, the weather. Not only is it a great way, like I think they do it regardless, but like take extra care to make sure they're doing it when dealing with a culture that's not their own. And that's a really good way for a DM who's not from a particular culture to allow players to still explore that at the table through NPCs, through cities, etc., without slipping into any like uncomfortable territory. And I think it's really effective, and also makes me as a player feel like, again, I have that agency and I'm getting to tell a story about something that is sensitive and important and all the rest of it in a way that is comfortable for me.
There was something else in that. Sorry.
Oh, I said I'm going to start a podcast listening to all of you talk.
Hey, I kind of know about podcasts, so I'll come on your podcast. There was something else that you brought up in this path that we have gone down, which I haven't had too much experience with it, but the idea of like a player making an NPC in their backstory who's like the king and super powerful and all of that. I feel like anyone who is making that kind of NPC, there's probably something in their backstory and where they're like, yeah, they're the king and super powerful and I hate them and I want to get away from them. Like there's probably some conflict there. Yeah. But if they have gone down that road, I find chatting with them about that in NPC or finding out more about that world that they're kind of creating in their head, and then asking them to make some connections to another player in the game. Being like, okay, so your dad's the king of this city, and this other player lives in this city. Why don't the two of you talk? Like, come up with some ideas between the two of you, some other people you might know, or how the king actually does stuff. Because if the other players have also a little bit of agency in, well, my dad's the king, it doesn't feel quite so OP, as it were. And the more you can connect your players' characters to each other, not just before the game, but even during the game, it's always going to be helpful. So I'd gently suggest that, but I do find that most people, when they're creating NPCs, their emotional support or they're giving their characters agency to do something or react in some way. And so I've never really had any players who are like, yeah, all my NPCs are amazing and all my backstory people are super powerful. And it's like, okay, so why are you leaving? What's going on?
Yeah. I think as well, like creating NPCs related to your character's backstory is a really good opportunity to flesh out your own character, to think about who they are, how they were raised, why they've ended up the way they are, where they got their skills from, who they learned them from. But then also being able to put an emotional connection with another person into that is what for me creates a really compelling like backstory NPC that I have seen DMs like enjoy bringing into the campaign. So for example, like my character who's a wizard, the same character from earlier, who one important NPC from her backstory is her uncle, who raised her, is also a wizard who taught her magic like one-on-one as he was raising her, as opposed to sending her off to mage school, which they couldn't afford. Yeah. And she has what I thought was a really interesting relationship with this character where he, you know, he's her uncle, not her father. He ended up raising her due to circumstances that he wasn't expecting. Wasn't really prepared to have a kid, didn't really treat her like a kid, kind of treated her like a student. And so they have this really interesting relationship where he is her father figure, but they also just kind of talk to each other like scholar colleagues. And sometimes he can be a bit condescending towards her without meaning it. And it creates this interesting like sense of conflict, but also deep love and adoration between those characters. That's really interesting to get to play out and to get to have other characters interact with, because when another player character encounters that NPC and they go like, oh, why'd you let him talk to you like that? Or like, oh, so this is why your approach to magic is so fucking weird and stuff like that. Like it makes things about the character make sense and then creates an emotional connection there that I think is just like really fun storytelling.
Yeah. Also, Jamie, I lied. I do have a way to keep track of NPCs, but this is only related to voices. I have a folder on my computer that is split into different folders based on campaigns and then the names of the character. And it is like I record 2-minute audio clips of describing the character and then a couple words from the character. So whenever I have to go back to it and I know beforehand, I'll like open that up and listen to it again. And that would give me the inflection, the tone, and possibly the way that they're speaking as well, a little bit of inflection in the tone and the speed of how they speak. I might have a little bit of description of what they're wearing, what they're looking at. And that's what lets me get back into the character when I just like go back into that folder and click it. Otherwise, I'll absolutely forget. And then I'll try to play it off as like, no, they switched their inflection of speaking on purpose.
They moved around a lot as a child, and so sometimes the accent just goes away. That's such a good idea. I should definitely do that for my NPCs, because that's I do descriptions of voice, and I try to keep a 1-2 word, high and haughty, gravelly but kind, something in where if I can at least get close. Oh my gosh, in the moment.
That's incredible. Those words would not help Gabe at all.
Well, and there may be words that you'll come up with that'll help you. I think everybody kind of has to learn what are the, where your voice goes, where your head goes, where this character is.
I used badger to describe a man once, and like it made sense to me.
Yeah. I will also use vocal descriptions of other characters because I've used the same voice, and I'm like, all right. Because I've got Gestok's voice down. I know what that voice is. I've used that NPC enough. This NPC, it's Gestok, but higher. It's so I'll reference other NPCs to help with my voices. And then the way I organize my NPCs is I have my campaign in sections by either the adventure that they're on or the place that they are, because I can't always remember the name. Especially since I'm really, really bad at names. Names are the worst. Names are horrible. I hate naming anything. But I can remember, this NPC was in this place during this adventure, and I can go there and look through my notes and be like, okay, here's that 2-sentence description of this NPC. City guard, deep voice, really cool duster coat. All right, I remember this guy. I remember Rife on Press. Let's do this. Like, that's what I need. But yeah, I think that gets into a little bit of that, how do you organize your notes as a DM, which is why I think both Gabe and I went.
I do so much. So I'm impressed by both of you so much because I do so much improv, and by you, because I, even with my characters, I don't always write a lot of backstory. When I DM and when I play, like literally 90% of stuff is improv. I wish I could be more organized, but for me, a lot of times it's about a matter of time. But that's why I actually love the idea of doing voice files, because I could record something really, really quick. That totally works for me. I'm super excited. I do want to give a quick plug because we are talking about like kind of everyday, because we brought up kind of everyday NPCs and stuff, and we brought up voices. We are working on a really cool book called Anansi's Tapestry of Lives, which is a book of everyday NPCs. So these are not like the Bandit King or the Duke of wherever. These are like the flower seller, the stable hand, the wine merchant, the fishmonger, the folks that populate the world that you play in with your players or as the DM that often you haven't fully fleshed out because they are kind of in the background. We're working really hard to make sure that these are really diverse folks, really colorful individuals. And to do that, we've enlisted bunches of guest writers from all different backgrounds and everything so that we can have a book of characters of all different kinds of backgrounds and representation. One thing that we're doing that's really interesting and really different is all of these NPCs come with an intro monologue that is professionally voiced over. So it will not always have the name of the character, but it's kind of how like what this character says, what this NPC says when you approach them. So it's kind of a really interesting thing, and it takes some of the pressure, I think, off of DMs who maybe aren't as comfortable with doing voices because they've got this voiceover file. This like one time communicates that person, and it kind of sets them in stone for these folks. So it's a fun project. There'll be more information coming on it soon, but I'm so excited that we've had some really great, awesome people contributing to it so far.
I want to say I am very fortunate to be a voice on it. Jamie, I want you to know one of the reasons I was so excited to be a voice on it was because it's something that I wanted. Like I wanted this resource. I like doing voices. I get tired of doing voices. I've been recording a podcast with some friends, and it's to the point where it's like I'm actually probably gonna go back and like just get some other people to record over the stuff that I was doing, because I know that my inflection was blending in, or it's hard, or I'm like, I don't like the way this person sounds. This is easy. I just don't want to sit and strain my voice. So when I was like, pre-voiced NPCs, yes, I'm glad you asked me to be in it, because now that means I get updates to when it's out.
Well, you'll also get a free copy, so there's
What?
that. Yeah, did you guys not know that?
Oh no, didn't
No.
know that. Sweet.
I was gonna pay for it.
Oh, that's silly. That's silly. Look at me. I'm like, that's silly. Oh, Kyle's going to be like, hey, wait, is this in the budget? I'll be like, budget. Don't come to me with your fancy words.
That sounds like a you problem, Kyle.
Kyle, thank you for all your patience. I'm the nice one, Kyle.
Right? Yes. The Never Ending would not run smoothly if it wasn't for Kyle. She is amazing. So I do want to give one more shout out. Just a reminder that we are matching some donations for the Kidney Foundation of Central PA. It's a really worthwhile cause. They do really incredible and important work. So click that link. If you donate $5 or more, we will match that with a $5 donation on top of the donation that we've already promised that we're doing for this. So yes. With that, I want to thank everybody for being on stream. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your talent with us, your expertise, your energy. This has been fantastic. And let's move to outros. So remind people who you are and where they can find you. And we'll go in alphabetical order.
Dang it. Hi, I'm Gabe. Gabe James Games. Almost forgot my name. You can find me on Twitch, Instagram, TikTok. I'm tangled in cords, and that's why I was shifting weird. I stream at irregular times. My TikTok content has maybe a third to do with tabletop, and then it's me dancing in the forest. My Twitter will be 1/4 tabletop content, and the other is cosplay, thirst traps, and or bad jokes. But I am in the space. I'm a creative producer at Roll20. That's a cool thing that I do. Yeah, that one's normal and interesting. Yes, you can find me at Gabe James Games across the internet.
Fantastic.
Hey, I'm Izza. If you want to find more of what I do, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Evil Clever Dog. I'm a cosplayer and set and costume and prop designer and fabricator, and I make cool things, and then I make videos about making cool things. So go check out the videos. I recently made a mimic dice box, like sculpted the entire thing. It's really cute. Go watch the video on my YouTube channel. Her name is Mimi. I love her. And I'm also a TTRPG streamer and podcaster. I do a lot of stuff with Asians Represent, and in fact, the episode that is coming out next Friday is one that I have hosted, a follow-up about mixed race representation in TTRPGs. Yay. We talk a lot about character creation in that, specifically through the lens of representing being mixed race. And yeah, so yeah, just, I don't know, go follow my stuff, watch my stuff, please. That would be really nice. I'm also contributing to the Anansi's Tapestry of Lives, and I'm really excited to write some cool NPCs.
And I'm Lauren Urban. I'm the content coordinator over at Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms. You can find me on Twitter as OboLauren, where I mostly post about D&D stuff, every once in a while about oboe stuff, because I am a professional oboist when there are orchestras, and then snacks, lots of snacks. So follow me on Twitter for most of that. Probably the most exciting thing going on is on Mondays, where in the last 2 episodes of Idle Champions Presents Court of the Raven Queen, with B. Dave Walters and Aaron M. Evans and Mark Meir and I've just lost names, Becca Scott and DJ Knight and little me. And we're having tons of fun, and we're gonna save people, and it's gonna be great. And that's about it. Yeah, follow me on Twitter for all of the updates to anything I happen to be doing, which is mostly just following the thirst traps that Gabe puts out.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. You can find Never Ending at Be Never Ending all over the internet. So check out our Reddit, check out we have a Discord too. I always forget that. Which does not bode well, but I do actually reply. We do actually reply to stuff there. But Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, obviously, but check us out at Be Never Ending, and go to beneverending.app and try out the 2D character builder. It's fun. So with that, thank you everybody for coming to D8 for Inspiration. We hope you took away some inspiration for today, for your weekend, and for your next game. Thanks so much.